And we are live on YouTube. I'm joined by none other than John Gooden. Thanks for joining me, John.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, doing good. It's a lovely day here in sunny Hertfordshire. So yeah, I've been enjoying listening to the birds sing and a little bit of sunshine as well.
For me, it's so nice to be working from home and being able to hear the birds sing and see the butterflies in my garden and actually see the sunshine. Usually I'm in an office, so it's been a breath of fresh air.
Well, I heard about that, which is why I chose this T-shirt with all the butterflies on it. So I hope you appreciate the effort.
I do appreciate the effort, John. So I was just saying that working from home's been good for me, but obviously it's because of a much more serious situation. And you yourself believe that you've actually suffered with COVID-19.
Yeah, don't know. Haven't had the test, but whatever I had, my wife had was pretty horrible. And I reckon whatever it was lingering for 3-4 weeks. Definitely a chest, definitely attacked the chest, and like the night sweats were the worst I've ever encountered, and like the fatigue and everything else. So we ticked a lot of the boxes that when you go down the list of symptoms. And I am kind of hoping that it was because of the whole antibody thing.
Yeah.
But because this country hasn't gotten itself in shape for testing, etc., we don't know. And I was, of course, sympathetic and going by all guidelines. So I didn't call the doctor. I didn't obviously go to hospital or anything like that. Didn't need to. It wasn't that bad. But at the same time, it would have been good to know with the testing if it was that one was dealing with. And of course, whether you now develop the antibodies. So certain countries seem to be confident in their tests, but in the UK, apparently we're not so much.
No. So when you are able to get one of those tests, I take it you'll be really keen to have one and kind of prove it to yourself.
Well, yeah, because it would affect I think it would affect my overall, let's say anxiety, because I have to travel internationally. And if I've got the antibody naturally, then I think I certainly won't be laissez-faire with things, but I might not go dressed as a mummy to the airport. I might just wear a mask and gloves.
Yeah.
So it's trying to decide, the best way of doing it. And also the family, whether our toddler had it and my wife, because I'll be coming home from wherever. So a lot of things, it's good. Information's always good, right? And accurate information. So yeah, if it's available to the general public, then I'll be down for that.
Yeah, and I know your little girl had a lot of health issues when she was born, and in the first stages of her life. So I'm sure you're even more protective than normal parents.
Well, I mean, I don't know, but from I've always been pretty protective. It's just in my nature anyway. And the good thing about her, it was like a mechanical defect in her heart, which has been repaired. And as far as we now know, and the cardiologists, etc., have all said she's not high risk, she's perfectly normal. So we shouldn't be considering her or treating her any differently to any other. She's 2 tomorrow. On Saturday.
It's the 7th. Okay.
Sorry, on Saturday. Yes, I don't know what day it is. I knew it was coming up though. So yeah, she turns 2 very soon. So yeah, we're not as worried, but I will never, for the rest of my life, forget those that period of time. It was very testing.
Yeah, I'm sure. And how do you celebrate a 2-year-old's birthday in lockdown?
You do it by having the most thoughtful wife in the world, she's the one who never ever forgets anyone's birthday, always does something for whoever it might be. And she has gotten together a full itinerary of stuff that will keep our daughter entertained. We're trying to work out whether we let people, I don't even know if we're allowed to, so stop me if I'm saying stuff that's illegal right now, but my mum and dad live a few roads away, and they're thinking about coming down and sitting in the front garden for an hour or so to help us celebrate with her. But then we don't know how it would be, because Elodie won't be able to go to them, and new problems, right? It's just crazy.
It's mental. It is mental. So let's talk about your job.
Okay.
you're a play-by-play commentator for the UFC and an analyst. Explain to people who don't know the difference between a play-by-play commentator and a colour commentator.
Yeah, I do this a lot. Hey, knock that out of the park. It's, I think, very, very simply, from what people hear at the front end in their ears, if you like, is I'm the guy who sort of leads the commentary, who steers it, and a color commentator is challenged, or should be challenged, by the play-by-play or lead commentator to really layer what the viewer is seeing. So whatever the athletes are doing, whatever sport this is, like, it's my job to talk you through the obvious, and then it's up to the analyst who has been there and done that to really give analysis and texture and color to the situation, and give the most educated view for the viewer. But then the other side of mine is that I would prepare the same as a color analyst, and I'll watch the fights, I'll indulge in their training footage, but there is a significant amount of preparation that goes into the show elements, the scripting. It's like the UFC broadcast, the prelims is one show, the main card is another show. There are hundreds of items that you have to prepare for, and you might not ever see them, because our sports production is maybe the most difficult out of all sports, because a fight might last 5 or 8 seconds, or 25 minutes, 15, 25 minutes. And you have to prepare for every eventuality. And that's the nature of, I mean, I don't really know any different, if I'm honest, but football's 45 minutes, you know where you're going, you know what's coming up. Nothing really is going to detract from that format. Yeah. So it's exciting, stressful, a lot of hard work, and a lot of the work you do gets left just never heard, never seen. But again, that's like a fighter, you know, and I do approach my work very much like a martial artist does theirs.
Yeah. I found it really interesting, the post you put up about your preparation that you do before fight week, and, you know, everything that you all the information that you look up about a fighter, and like obviously you rewatch their fights and all of the notes that you make. For me, that's the only way that I can approach interviews as well. There's some of us that fly by the seat of their pants and are able to do that, and you'd never know that they hadn't prepared. For me, I like to have pages and pages, and then the conversation might take us in a different direction where we never use them. But I know for my own peace of mind that I've got them if anything went quiet.
Yeah, I think I call it a safety blanket. You know, I feel kind of naked going into any production, whether I'm hosting a show or commentating. I do a lot of reporting backstage for the UFC as well. I do an awful lot of producing. So a lot of the athletes in Europe, if ever they're in a main event, you know, like sometimes the countdown features, I don't do so many of those anymore, but like Jan Blachowicz and Jack Hermansson, Jimmy Manuel, the last fights you've seen from those guys, I was the one there with a crew organizing that shoot, asking the questions and trying to, and, you know, setting up sequences, etc. I've really enjoyed learning how to become what's called an ENG producer. Right. So, but even that, same deal, you know, over prepare so that you don't get caught out. And I often don't have time to prepare the way that I would like for any of the jobs that I do. So I always go in with this little bit of nervousness going, oh my God, there's more, there's more I could know. And it never really bites me on the arse, but you're always worried about that one time it does.
And there must be certain fights, because obviously you do the analyst work as well. So inside the Octagon and all of the other shows, I can't remember all of the names of all the different ones that you do, but seems like you're providing some kind of analysis or input on pretty much every fight that's happening, at least in the UFC. So how many times does that work go completely out the window where the fight just doesn't happen? Like Khabib and Tony, you must be sick of analysing that.
You know, it's bad for me but then you got to think about, you've always got to keep the fighters in mind.
Yeah.
All of this is about them. It's about telling their story and just trying to maybe add some sparkle in a broadcast from my perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's Dan Hardy, and when we do Inside the Octagon, that man is like, he is a genius at that stuff. I genuinely believe, out of all of the analysts, the fight analysis wise, Dan, I believe, is the top guy. And one of the reasons why is because no one really has the job that he does, and this forum to do this analytical work. But even his mind is perfectly tuned. His vocabulary and his experiences, good and bad, make him a fantastic analyst, particularly for a show like Inside the Octagon and the work he does on his own channel. So when he throws himself into it, mind, body, and soul, every single show. So when it doesn't get to see the light of day, we all say it. We're like, can we not just put it out there?
Yeah.
Because people will watch it anyway. And these
we would.
down the line, and it's still okay. They do put two skill sets against one another, but you can also just look at independent skill sets and learn something and enjoy the work that they've done so far. I know it doesn't fit with the offering for the UFC. It sort of doesn't make sense, but we do get upset. It's a lot of effort, and you're like, oh man, like, this is such a good show.
Yeah.
And it never sees the light of day, but we get used to it now. It's the nature of the beast, and there's always a next. The good thing is, there's always the next one. The UFC moves so fast. There's always another fight.
But in a way, that's just kind of a duplication of workload, isn't it? Because you've prepared for one fight and now it's turned into another fight. So you've got to research. Okay, you've got the data on what that person's done before, if there's one fighter the same, but you now need to analyze how they're going to match up against this new individual.
Yeah, but that's actually a challenge, and it's a challenge being a commentator as well, because I don't ever want to let it slip. I don't ever want to get complacent. So you've almost got to screw up and start again so that you relearn. Otherwise, it's very easy for me to pull up, oh, there you go, Tony Ferguson, this is what I said last time. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I get given a bio by the UFC that all the UFC staff get. Like, I don't want to give you what's on that bio, because that's what everyone else has got. I want to tell you what's not on the bio. So there is that time where we look back at previous Inside the Octagons, and I think, oh, should I go back and watch the last one we did on Tony? And I think, well, maybe not, because just subconsciously I might get back into, oh, remember that roll through he did there? Remember those elbows against such and such, and he did that against, and you sort of think, no, it's a new opponent, it's a new approach, and that is what styles make fights, and you have to keep that in mind sometimes.
So true. Let me hop to the comments for a second before I carry on. Mason wants to know the favourite UFC fight that you've seen. I guess maybe one as a commentator and one as just a viewer.
Yeah, it's really like, I do get asked this, and I should actually sit down and try and work it out, because because I don't have an answer at the tip of my tongue. I think for me, I have had some special moments. My work before the UFC at Cage Warriors was very dear to me. I felt like we were all trying to build something very special there. And I think the McGregor fight with Bushinger, which really probably was the like a really big moment for me as a broadcaster, because Conor was on such a tear at the time, and that led him into the UFC. So that was significant in that sense. And then Conor, like, that whole Dublin event was massive. Then Joanna versus Jessica Penne was a world title fight, the only world title fight I've called for the UFC. And then there are moments like Till versus Cowboy, where I'd been to visit Darren at home in Liverpool. I'd done my own little documentary with him as well, and I'd gotten to know him I'd like to say a little bit personally, you know, I'd like to think that we were friends. So
Yeah.
see, and it's not about favorites, it's just understanding that person a little bit deeper than you might do another fighter. So
Yeah.
it's really difficult for me. Like Gustafsson's another one. That he's another one that
On the wall behind you.
he's on the wall behind me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, oh, it's in shot this time. I mean, that's probably not his favourite. Let's just
No, probably not his best.
Not his favourite one there, but I mean, that was a huge event. And then there are other elements like going on the road. And I just got back from New Zealand. Well, not just, but that was the last show that I did. Paul Felder, my co-commentator, a friend of mine, was in an absolute war with Dan Hooker,
Yeah.
a guy who I have so much respect for. I was in an elevator with him after he lost as a featherweight, and he just was so down. But he was trying to like wear a smile, and I'm so terrible in those moments with fighters when they've lost, because I just know what it's like. And then to see him and Paul fight against one another, and that whole event was very special. So I'm sorry I'm not giving like a succinct answer and it's ABC, but that for me right now is such a special memory given the hiatus that we're on, and the fight was incredible as well.
Yeah.
So I think the Till Cowboy one, that last one, Felder Hooker, is a very special one for me. But kind of anything GSP and Anderson Silva, that really got me going. You know, back in the day, they were some serious fights. Sakuraba and Pride as well. Just that the occasion was very special.
So what's it like to commentate on a friend? I would be awful. I'm always getting accused of being biased.
Yeah, people say that, and people say we're biased all the time and actually you're always going to get called biased, by the way. You know, if people know you have an association, whether it be a colleague, a friend, geographical, someone on the other side will find something in what you've said to say that you're not pulling for their guy. And like, I think that we were probably quite harsh on Paul listening back to that commentary. And sometimes I program myself to even be that way so that I definitely don't come across as being biased. But if I'm honest, then I don't mean to sound like a sort of arrogant, but I'd like to think I'm more of a professional than letting that sort of thing take over my output. And I've done it for a long time. I started my career at a show called KO MMA in Watford, and it was our team show. Like every fight or every other fight was a teammate versus someone else.
Yeah.
And I'm not there to be a cheerleader. I'm there to like help augment this viewing experience, you know. So I've learned very early on how to temper that. I've had my coach, Denison Sutherland, you know, fought on Cage Warriors. I commentated on his fight. And he got beat up by Scott Askham. It was like my heart was breaking.
Oh.
But even we talk about Darren Till. Darren Till got knocked out in London. His girlfriend and mum and family were there. And I'm shouting and screaming about this incredible knockout that Masvidal's just delivered. And in the corner of my eye, my friend's still on out of it. And it's the nature of the game. And I think that the fighters understand as well. I haven't had anyone sort of pull me up yet, but what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
There's always a winner and a loser. So it is tough, but you have to do your job. You know, that's what you're there to do.
Yeah. Well, you said there'll always be people who think that you're, you know, being biased towards the other side. How do you deal with the criticism? Do you look at comments or feedback on your commentary?
You can't. It's very challenging. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It is the area of the job that I like and dislike the most. Probably dislike it more than I like it, because when I was growing up, there was something called Points of View with the BBC. If you didn't like a program, you would have to get out a piece of paper, dip the quill in ink, and then pen a letter of complaint to this board. and then they would go through it, and it might actually see the light of day, and whatever they did at the BBC, it would get filtered through to the relevant departments. Now, some mother lover is like straight in your back pocket, and it could be something really nice. It could be something truly awful. I've had death threats, and I've also had people say, I'm the very best in the world at what I do. And I just can't take either seriously. I don't believe I'm the very best in the world at what I do. And I don't believe that I should die as a result of something I've said on a piece of sport. You know, it's, and
I can't believe that anybody, however bad their commentary was, would deserve to die for anything that they said. It's insane.
I've never said anything really controversial. I think it's worth saying that as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be in the job. It's very difficult. And I think that I grew with UK MMA, and it's always about the fighters. It's always about the sport. You know, I got into this to help the sport. I did not get into this to be a UFC commentator or a British sports commentator who aspires to do F1 or the Olympics or something like that. No, I was helping out my coach's show. Then I was helping out Graham Boylan. Then I was helping out Graham Boylan's Cage Warriors. And then I ended up getting picked up by the UFC. And now I'm helping, I'd like to think, the UFC, but also mixed martial arts. It's still about mixed martial arts for me.
Yeah.
And I've rediscovered that recently, not because I was getting sidetracked by the lure of maybe working in another sport or something like that. And it was sort of stressing me out because those opportunities weren't presenting themselves.
What was the other sport?
Well, just any of them, really. Just having conversations with TV people about doing something outside, and then it never really happening, and then being upset or stressed about it. But I never got into this to do that in the first place. So why am I worrying about it? And I think that with social media, and sorry, what I was getting to, I do this.
So do I.
I do this. Sorry, that's why I do commentary. Just to pull it back round. I didn't go to media school, and I didn't have a bunch of people around me to help me build up a thicker skin. Like I was this wide-eyed, just really excitable guy in this sport that I truly loved. And now you're insulting me. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like I'm the fighters and that seem happy, the coaches and everyone else. And like, why are you being like that? Like, and now and then I get aggressive because I still train. It's in me. That one of the reasons why I do this sport is because there's something in me that like needs to be managed. And I'm like, well, I'll come to the gym. Like, would you say come to the gym and we'll work it out? And some people might take me up on it. You might beat me up, but I'll give it a good go. So I went through a lot of these emotions. And even now, especially with shows like Inside the Octagon, that's our show. You know, it's a small team. Dan and I recorded that in a broom cupboard. Like there's a woman called Amanda helped come up with that idea conceptually after just seeing the interaction between Dan and I. And they made a show around it. I mean, what a compliment. And I know that the show's grown in slightly different directions, but all the same, like I'm the guy that stands there with Dan and our big friend, the screen, and we sit down with the editor. There's a few people that have been involved, and everyone's loved working on that show because of the passion and what the fans enjoy from it. So I do go through the comments, and I'll get people talking about my teeth and what I'm wearing and how many times I've worn it and why I'm even there, and you're like, Dan and I have spent like weeks, particularly Dan, has given you all of this incredible information. And like, what is wrong with the world? But that's the world that we live in. And at the same time, we put ourselves in that position with my job title. So you have to learn to get on with it. It's taken a long time. But now I'm at a stage where like I know how to filter that stuff out, but it is in your feed. You have to go through it. If someone ats you, you go through it. If you go looking for it, if you Google your name, if you go into the forums, if you go like into comment sections with stuff that you've been a participant of, you're gonna find bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's a human condition. We will look past the good and we will focus on the bad.
Yeah.
There is something within us. It's like a protective instinct that we have. So you just got to learn how to manage that. And it takes a long time, and it worries the hell out of me for the younger people of this world, because I'm not so young anymore. And I haven't been able to deal with it fully. So it's an unfortunate area of society nowadays. But at the same time, we connect and other people connect, and I've managed friendships that have blossomed into like physical interaction.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, there's just the negative side of the coin as well.
But don't focus on it, and then it's not so much that. But it can get difficult sometimes. And you do open up after a show. I have in the past opened up going, oh no, like I felt like I've had a terrible show. And then you'll get, that was great. And you're like, I've had a stinker tonight. And you're saying it's great. And then you think you've had a great show, and people are saying, how do you, I hope you don't get paid for this one. You can't win.
So you mentioned there, you thought you had if you think you had a bad show, that's the other side of it. And to me, the more important bit, like, are you quite critical of your own performances? Do you ever go back and think, I got that wrong? Or like, how do you try and like improve with every show?
Being mindful of improvement and having a learning mindset. And I think, again, I come at this as a martial artist, and every martial artist wants the perfect sparring session, the perfect fight. You want that perfect performance, and it's no different, I guess. That's just but everyone in their job wants to have that, especially if it all culminates in an event. If you're in an event driven way, or if you make a movie, you want that one to be perfect, etc. So with my work, I very much want it to be smooth, and I want to integrate new, fresh ideas every time. I want to have the balance with my co-commentators to be just right. I want to put like really memorable capstones on fights for like a personal goal thing, but also so that the family and friends of fighters can look back and they feel like our commentary's done justice to what their whole training camp and their fight was doing. So I put a lot of pressure on myself, yes. And I'm not someone who literally says it'll be good enough. I'm not that guy, I will never be that guy. I'll never get complacent about my role with the UFC. I beat myself up about it. I'll probably die earlier than what I need to as a result of the stress. But do you know what? It will make me better at what I do, and I'll have a better quality of existence because I know I've given it my all, and that's all I can do. Yeah.
I want to come back to your martial arts journey, but we've got a few more questions come in. Who would win in the Octagon between you and Brad Walton?
Well,
I'm going to say you because you've spoken about being a martial artist a lot so far.
And this is the thing, right? I mean, I love Brad, but Brad's sitting there eating takeaways every night and crushing beers. I'm having smoothies. I've got a chin-up bar here. I've got my ball that I'm doing jiu-jitsu drills on. I had an hour-long conversation with my coach yesterday. I'm a martial artist and have been since I'm 7. I don't necessarily look it. Sometimes I think I wish I was a bit more beaten up, but at the same time, then I probably wouldn't have the job that I do now.
Yeah.
But I've fought on the mat, in a boxing ring. I've had a couple of amateur MMA fights. So poor old Brad, if he did get that, I'm afraid he'd see the competitive side of me.
Brad, we both love you, but we're both picking John in that one. Sorry.
No soccer kicks, because I know he's into that whole pride thing, right? I can't get down with the
headbutts.
None of that. No soccer kicks for me.
Sam Oakley wants to know what your first interaction with Dana was like. You remember it?
No, I honestly haven't had many interactions with him. I think I made a bit of a fool of myself. Yeah. Full disclosure, right? I'm petrified of Dana. I don't get starstruck. I'm not really intimidated by people, but there's something about Dana. I have so much respect for everything he's done. And he doesn't suffer fools gladly. And
Yeah.
I'm this kind of like geek, I guess, fight geek fella who wears a bow tie on the other side of the world, who he probably doesn't even understand that well. So really, I have no idea what he thinks of me, but I still have my job. But I'll tell you this. So when we were doing, it goes back to the big UFC Dublin event in 2014. The venue was so small that we didn't have anywhere to get ready. Now, I don't submit my fighter bios until the very last minute, because I'm always working on developing those notes until maybe an hour before the fights. Like, I don't want to put too much pressure on the people that have got to print everything out. But I'll take it to the line. And that's because I could walk past the dressing room and I could see Brad Pickett putting his hat on, dancing with his teammates just before the last fight of his career. And I'm like, that's got to go in the commentary.
Yeah.
And because the night is so busy, I do have to write a lot of stuff down so that I can prompt those memories. So I tend to leave things to the last minute. Anyway, we had no rooms to prepare. So I was in the hallway, all dressed up, suit on. I'm in the hallway in like a little desk, and my boss's boss, like the head of production, walks past and he's like, "Hi, John, have a good show tonight," or something. And Dana was behind him, all smiles, looked at me, kind of nodded. And I said something ridiculous like, "Enjoy yourself." And I just thought, what did you just say? Like, what does that even mean? Do you know? And I think he might even have just looked back and have gone, like, maybe it was a good thing he probably didn't understand me, because he just marched on. So not the most positive, but not negative either. I haven't sat down in a room with Dana. The recruitment of me was done via the production arm. And yeah, he doesn't typically come to the shows that I work. But the Fertitas, I will say that Lorenzo, I guess because Dana was always very busy when he was around, Lorenzo would appear Octagon side quite a lot. And it was weird. On more than one occasion, I'd be like in the moment trying to get ready for something, and I'd spin around and he would like be here. He'd be right here with his hand out, ready to shake my hand and wish me luck for the show.
Wow.
Like, he was a true gent. And yeah, I miss seeing those guys. Like, even when I'm studying film, we go back through the fights, we see the Fertitta brothers there, and I miss seeing them there. You know, they were such a big part of our sport in the UFC, and Lorenzo was always a real gent.
That's amazing. And it's, no consolation to you, but I'm glad other people have those moments as well. That's usually me. Where has the best atmosphere at UFC events? You mentioned Ireland there. That's got to be one of the big ones, is it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know that we all talk about it, re-ingrains it, but it was such a moment for Irish MMA. It really was the peak, I think. And I know that Irish MMA still goes on. And I was speaking absorption, I think, the personnel there, and then John Kavanagh's relationship with Bellator has meant that they've taken a lot of the talents and integrated it to Bellator. So a lot of the UFC fans may think that it's not where it was, but it just feels like that was the real point. I'll tell you what, though, the first event in Korea that I did with Kenny was phenomenal.
Was it?
It really blew my mind, because we expected it to be very much like Japan and be really quiet, but the Korean fans were off the hook. So that stuck out. Yeah, you always get funny moments in Australia. They're very creative with their language. They've said some really surreal, like obscure things that I've caught. And it's in the morning as well, which is always a weird one. So yeah, they have some funny moments. But yeah, Ireland, I think, still has to be one of those moments. Liverpool's walkout for Darren Till when he fought Wonder Boy. I was there. I wasn't calling the fights. We'd just had a baby. So, but that was a moment as well.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. Who do you think would be good to replace Bruce Buffer when the day comes?
No one can replace Bruce Buffer.
No,
no one can replace Bruce Buffer. Like he'll move mountains to get to a show. He is honestly, he's a very special man. I'm lucky to call him a friend now, and I've spent time in actually coming back from the last show. We were traveling together, and he's just such a unique individual. His journey's so crazy, and I don't even know how old he is, but
I was going to ask you how old he is.
I don't know how old he is, but I mean, most people would probably have opted for retirement by now, but there's no chance that Bruce is going to give up his space in the Octagon. And I think he gets better. You know, Dan and I were looking back at some early fights for some stuff we did for the UFC on the social medias, and like listening back to him then, it was great. But now he's just got that growl. That growl's just so even better. Yeah, no one can replace him. They'll find someone else, of course they will. But Joe Martinez, Bruce Buffer, they're in their own world, and they're spectacular announcers.
One of the best presents my husband ever bought me was before my fight. He paid Bruce Buffer to record a walkout message for me, and it was insane. It's got to be everybody's dream to have Bruce Buffer call out your fight.
Yeah,
he just adds something, doesn't he?
Yeah, and actually, I've spoken to fighters that haven't really, well, they've thought about their UFC debut and they've been managing the jitters, and all of a sudden they hear Bruce's voice and they're like, oh shit, now they understand where they are. And they look at the gloves and they see UFC written on them, they're like, I'm here. And that's yeah, he's a massive part of the whole production.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about the extensive travel that you do and the fact that you go out to Australia and New Zealand. What is the trick to managing that when you're, I think New Zealand, you stayed for one extra full day, and that was like a rarity for you because you obviously want to come home to your family, but it takes so long to travel there. Do you try and stay on UK time? How does it work? No,
you just got to get over it, because I go out there probably a little bit longer than a lot of the other guys who do my sort of work, because I do some producing work at the front end of fight weeks. Right. So I'll typically get in on a Tuesday. So that's enough time to get acclimatized by, Friday, Saturday, typically. And then you just change and come back, and you got to deal with it. I remember coming back from Singapore in November, and I got home and I landed early in the morning. And so I had to go the full day. And my wife was like, here's the baby. And I was like, oh, Jesus. But
she'll keep you awake.
You know what? Kind of fighting the jet lag helped. And it got me on time, probably a little bit quicker than if I'd have tried to have a nap here and there. And that's the thing. You just got to sort of put on your big boy pants and just get on with it.
And how do you stay healthy on the road? I think most people will be aware that you're vegan. Is it difficult to find, like in certain places, is it more difficult to find stuff that?
Yeah, it is, because I don't have a lot of time. Like as much as I prepare, like quite a long way out for these broadcasts, so many times, as you were saying earlier about fights falling out, there are so many changes. The fight order might change. That completely throws all of my notes out. Like we have, I've had a conversation with John Anik recently. I'm starting a new podcast, so that will be coming out soon. And we really dive into like the detail of our job. But we have maybe up to 300 pieces of paper that we'll take into a broadcast, but they go from like 1 to 300 crudely. And if I had some 120 changes, then you've got to go back and you do everything up to 120. Then you've got to rejig everything, rewrite it, reorder it. And it's just, it takes so long that you don't get a lot of time. So if there isn't a decent amount of options, vegan options for me, which, let's be honest, not even the best places in the world do. And I'm not mad about it. It's my choice. But I'll end up eating the same two things off the menu, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, lunch, dinner, from Tuesday to Saturday, maybe. No, that's not fair, actually, because I will make sure I go out with the team probably twice in the week as well. So I'll eat out. But generally speaking, it gets a bit boring. But my relationship with food is probably a little bit different these days. I've been vegan 6 years now, and it really is just fuel, and back in 2014, the options weren't there. So you ate food for a purpose, and it wasn't about a culinary experience. The problem now is there's so much choice, and there are now more options, and they're not always healthy. You do indulge in them. So I wouldn't say I always stay super healthy, but I try. I take certain supplements on the road with me as well, a lot of cereal bars and stuff like that. Huel is something, Huel. That's like a meal replacement. I've taken that away with me before to places like Brazil, where I think I'm gonna, I'll have a good breakfast, but everything else is it's a bit of a game of roulette. So but it's my choice, and you can typically get a decent amount of stuff from the supermarket, and I'll just take it back to the room and crack on.
Yeah. Was it ethical reasons that you became vegan, or health reasons?
There's so a blend of both. I blew my back out really bad. I ended up not training for about 5 years, and it coincided with me really spending more time doing work for the sport rather than training. So it's worked out, if you like, but it was awful at the time. I was like getting to being depressed, and I was an electrician back then as well, so I couldn't really do my job on site. But then I didn't really want to do my job on site, so it was a good excuse to be in the office. So all of these things have a sort of silver lining. So I was looking at ways that I could repair my body, and apart from like physical manipulation and surgery and things like that, of course, the only thing we can control is weight management, if you like, is what we eat and drink. And I started looking at a lot of Eastern ways and alkaline diets and things like that. And eventually I came, and by the way, I'd already cut dairy out, and I didn't really have cheese anyway. So that side of things, what a lot of people would consider the biggest obstacles, I'd already dealt with that. And then I saw something called The Greatest Speech in the World. And it was a guy called Gary Yourofsky giving a talk at a college in the States, and really showed some of the horrific scenes from like secret camera footage inside these like the animal agricultural industry. And it just broke my heart. I was crying. I was angry. I was just so emotional. And I thought, I can't now just go downstairs and throw 2 chicken breasts in the oven. It's just like, I would just be a total hypocrite. So instead I went downstairs and cleared the cupboards and the freezer out, put it all in the bin, and said, we're going vegan from today. And that was it.
How did your wife take that?
Not very well. She thought I was nuts, if you'll pardon the pun. But yeah, that was it. From that moment on, that's how I did it. She has eggs and fish. But yeah, vegan is how I've been ever since, and it's kept my digestive system a lot less stressed. I used to suffer with like bad stomach quite. I've had salmonella 3 times. I've been very unlucky, and I think that's left my stomach not very resilient. And so eating plants all the time, I don't really have a lot of the problems that I used to. Yeah, and it's just what I eat. So I don't tend to bang the drum too loudly. It's just they're my choices. But I don't wear leather. There's no leather in the car. I won't. But at the same time, I won't buy Nike products because I don't think they treat people very well. So I've worked out where I want to shop, who I want to shop with. I vote with my pound, and now I've got that straight. I just stick to that, and it makes things more simple.
I hope you're okay with Reebok then.
But but I don't really I don't buy their stuff, so I'm not really contributing. And it's there's good and bad. And listen, I've got an Apple Mac here. I don't think Apple are necessarily the greatest people in the world, but I like sometimes to think that I can use their technology for a little bit of good as well. So it's a counterbalance.
Right, let me go back to some of the questions. Oh, we are doing You're lucky I didn't drag you into this. We're doing who can down the pint fastest challenge with some of the fighters we've had on. Have you got any idea how many seconds it would take you to down a pint?
I'm awful with anything that's particularly cold or fizzy.
Yeah, that's what I struggled with.
Yeah, I'm bad. Like I've got a friend of mine who's got like an open gullet. It's like there's no motion. It's like this doesn't work, and it just immediately just goes straight into his belly.
Yeah, you've either got the trick or you haven't. Some people can swallow Frankfurters whole as well. They just kind of open their esophagus and.
Hey, listen, that's a completely different genre, Casey. I'm not sure if we should even. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
If you could change one rule in MMA, what would it be?
I think the 12 to 6 elbows are a bit of a silly one. And I understand where they've come from, but we are moving on as a sport. I think the problem is we just have more important things to deal with in the sport rather than addressing those bits and pieces. However, I can see those going away in the future.
What are your thoughts on weight cutting?
I can't wait for it to go.
Any ideas of how is best to address that?
I think culturally, it's a culture thing. You know, it's an inherited part of the sport from wrestling. I know that people can do it well and do it well and effectively, but a lot of people don't, and probably more people don't than do historically. And I just think that it just doesn't make sense. If you were an alien and you came down to planet Earth and someone talked you through this, you would do this to yourself, to do that, to go back to, you'd be like, why? And we are seeing a slight shift with established people like pros that have been around a long time that are now fighting at a more natural weight, which is
doing well.
And they're proving that you can do well. But IMAF, I think, plays a very important role in this, because if you instill that culture from the amateur days, then as you grow in the sport, then it's just not something that you're going to necessarily want to do. So you might resist and therefore just compete at a more natural weight class. But if no one else is doing it, that's where the problem lies. And still, you're going to be on the map. Even those guys coming through the IMAF scene now will be on the map with pros that are weight cutting. So until there's this shift, then I think it will remain with us. So we, in the short term, have to get better at the science of weight cutting. But I'd like in the medium term for it to go away, because it would make, like, your job and my job would be way easier when we're interacting with athletes, because they're so depleted. They don't really want to be talking about like anything. They don't want to be talking. They just want to just like get on with their weight cut. And it's also another thing that they talk about, and people get upset about the weight cut thing because it causes anxiety and stress. So the sooner it's gone, the better. And I think that it will be healthier always round.
Yeah. I'm sure you get this question all the time, but top tips for wannabe commentators.
It's interesting, right? Because now we're in this situation where I'm in this is my shed where I can just film a bunch of stuff. I've actually been thinking, I'll get your take on this. I've been thinking about doing a little course for people that want to do sports commentary, and just like trying to get quite deep, not just an ABC, but really going deeper into how I do sports commentary. And I obviously have read and listened to a lot of people over the years, and how I think that the things that you should do and try and train to become better. So I am thinking about doing it. I haven't market tested whether there'd be an appetite though. So
I think that would be amazing. And I definitely think there would be a high take up for that.
Well, so whoever asked that question, sorry, I didn't hear his or her name, but I have a YouTube video on my channel, John Gooden UK, and it does talk about that. There's some presenting commentary and tips. What was specifically the question again? Like top tips
for, or how to get into it in the first place, and also to be good at it.
Okay, I think there's quite a lot there, but what I would say is you got to really want to do it. I'd ask someone like, why commentary? Because it is quite a geeky side of things. I actually turned down commentary when I was at the BBC in my early 20s because I wanted to be a TV presenter, not a commentator. But actually, if you love the sport, it is such a wonderful way to sort of indulge in all of that. But it's not a lot of glamour. There's a lot of time spent researching and watching fights, video, other sports, and trying to get into the science of it. There is a craft there that you have to try and develop. And I love that. If I didn't like it, then I couldn't do this job because it takes far too much effort in order to do that. So first and foremost, you got to love whatever your area is. You got to understand your audience very, very well so that you know what to deliver. Otherwise, it's like ordering apples from Sainsbury's and delivering them limes. You know, you've got to understand who your audience is. You've got to be authentic. Don't try and be Mike Goldberg, Chevello, Ronaldo, Clive Tilsley, whoever that is. Be yourself. What is your take on your sport that you're trying to commentate on, and do that within the parameters of what the production schedule is allowing you to do. And I would study, you know, just see what you like, but don't be too hard on yourself. Try and find that mold. Start at the bottom, because I'm telling you now, the lessons that I learned when I was doing grassroots shows are, I think, what make the difference and why I'm still hired by the UFC.
Yeah.
People talk about, oh, what do you do if there's a fighter that's new to the UFC who no one knows about? I'm like, I was interviewing amateurs getting their hands wrapped who have never had an MMA fight before, running around backstage. And I enjoyed that. Like, I'm not scared of that because I've done it, but other people might be intimidated by it. So go and get really into your local scene and put yourself out there for free. I honestly, and I am not having a dig at anyone that I worked for, but generally speaking, because I was earning a salary somewhere else, and if I didn't go to that job, I would lose money. I never earned money from this until I worked for the UFC. So I was working 6 years doing writing and stuff like that for free, really. But they're your reps. You need that. That's how TV works as well. So don't be under no illusion. It is an investment in many different respects, but it's so rewarding. And we have such an incredible community in mixed martial arts, and it's growing all the time with fascinating people. So yes, of course, I'm all get involved. But it's quite a difficult question to answer, but there's a couple of things there. I think it's important to be mindful of those elements.
How important is your own training in helping you with the commentary?
It probably isn't as important as I'm, how do I say this? So I think I could probably still do my job, and it would probably still be maybe people wouldn't even know much difference, but for my own,
I think you can tell. Well,
for my own personal confidence, I go to jiu-jitsu, I'm going to work. I still, unfortunately, I've got some injuries now, which is stopping me from sparring mixed martial arts. And I don't do it that much at all these days, which sort of is quite upsetting. But anyway, there is a language in the gym. There is something about that brotherhood of being on the mats with people, getting punched in the face, knowing what that feels like, chaining something together that you learned a few weeks ago and then delivering on that. And being around professional fighters. I'm at Team Crossface. We've got a bunch of guys and girls that are out there competing internationally, you know, and just being around and reminding myself that it's about that grind. It's not all the UFC is the very tip of the iceberg. So reminding myself about what it's like and everyone's different take and all of that stuff. I think it keeps you humble. It stops me. I don't think I do this much anyway, but I really don't want to criticize a fighter or a performance. Sometimes as a viewer, you know, when there are situations where I have thought that it's appropriate, but generally speaking, if you know what it's like to take those licks day to day, then you wouldn't say a bad word against these athletes, you know, because it is so damn tough. So I think it's important to keep reminded of that and be in it. And then, of course, there's the obvious stuff like knowing technique. And the fact that I know that technique means that I believe I can give you a deeper level of commentary, because then Dan Hardy doesn't say Kimura. I can tell you a Kimura is a shoulder lock. Dan Hardy can tell you exactly why it worked or didn't work.
Yeah.
and that's what I try and bring to a broadcast. I'll give you the simple stuff. They do the more detailed stuff.
Amazing. Few more here. Oh, just a lot of people saying that they're enjoying the interview.
Thank you very much.
I have got one final question. It was submitted in advance from Steve Tebbert, our mutual friend.
No.
He says, I need to ask you why you got arrested when you were driving his car.
We never got arrested, actually. So here's the thing. I'm a big petrol head, and Steve and I, like, he's one of my closest friends, one of my dear friends. Anyway, Steve's always had nice cars. I've had some nice cars, but not as nice as his cars now. We were out on the town, and Steve, I think, was a little worse for wear, and I wasn't drinking. So I was driving his car, and I think it was the first time I was behind the wheel. It was a Peugeot 206 GTI. And we'd pulled up at some lights around a roundabout in Watford, the Dome roundabout, if anyone's in the area. And someone had come next to us, and it looked like they were giving us the eye a little bit. So Steve looked at me, and I was someone that was, back in the day, I actually wanted to do motor racing. I tried to get a scholarship to race for race touring cars. So anyway, I dumped the clutch. I took off from the lights. I was going sideways around the roundabout, pulled it back the other way. And Steve's like, this is great. And I was enjoying the driving experience. Anyway, we've left this other car for dust. We're now going up this single carriageway, goes to a dual carriageway. And I could see these lights like hurtling up behind us super quick. And I'm like, who's that? And then the sirens went on, and I was like,
oh no,
I'm not insured on this car. I shouldn't be driving it. And we were going along, and he's like, I knew all of Steve's details, so I probably could have passed for him.
He did say as well, do you still remember his date of birth and postcode?
Well, I did at the time. I knew all of that stuff. So I'm going. And I literally said to Steve, people are going to laugh at this, and I'm going to take some heat for this. I'm like, I'm just going to pull over, Steve. I'm just going to pull over. I'm just going to tell him. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to tell him. I'm just going to pull over. Let's do it. Let's just get it done. I'll face the consequences. And the funny thing was, they came up behind, and because we were now behaving ourselves, they just stayed there for like 30 seconds, but it felt like half an hour. And then they just drove on, and we never got pulled over. We lived to see another day, and Johnny G's license never got those 6 points.
There's something about a police car being behind you, even when you're doing nothing wrong, that just like instills fear into your heart, and you start driving like a granny.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't about 2 minutes before that, which is why they were paying some interest to us.
One more, and then I'll let you go, because I've had you for an hour. Thank you so much. It's been amazing, and I could ask you questions all day. Tom Heffernan wants to know if Diego Sanchez is the most bonkers fella in the whole of MMA.
Hey, listen, there's it depends on your measure of bonkers, but I think it's fairly well known that he is a unique character. Gotta love him, right? It's hard to say anything like bad against him, because he's such a legend. And still putting in performances, but he is most definitely, and always has been, right? He always has been just one of a kind. But we are so lucky to have so many one of a kinds in our sport. We have one this weekend, right, with Tony Ferguson. There is no man like Tony Ferguson. And I'm just I'm blessed to be in a world where I get to really sort of look at these people through a bit of a magnifying glass.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. It's been amazing talking to you. Honestly, I could ask you questions all day. And I do think if you wanted to put on a commentary course, there'd be a lot of people who'd be super interested in looking into that.
if people would like want to comment or send me a message, just so I feel like tangibly whether there would be an appetite for it. But yeah, I've been doing it over 10 years now, so I reckon I've got a couple of things I can share. And while we're in this situation and I'm not earning any money at all, I thought it might be a good time to try and put something out there, sort of a mutual thing.
Yeah. So is there a possibility of you working on the island in some way? I mean,
Yeah.
presumably you'll be doing some remote inside the octagons for all of these, but in terms of commentary, could that be
I believe so. I believe that Fight Island might be a destination for me, but and this is absolute God's honest, like there have been no fight cards to my knowledge that have been announced or even pairings that will be going on in Fight Island. So for now, because I don't have a US visa and obviously because of the travel restrictions, I'm not able to call any fights for the UFC right now. But I do believe it will be an international destination, and I can come back into that rotation and do my job, which I cannot wait to do.
Awesome. Well, that would be great to have you part of history. I think we're really lucky that we've got some great people representing Britain, and you, Dan, and Bisping's doing a great job as well. And
absolutely,
it's really, really good that we've got you guys representing us and doing a great job. So keep up the good work. Love all the analysis as well. In the meantime, while we're waiting for you to get back in the commentary box. And thank you so much for your time, John.
Thank you. And I know this is very much a UK MMA based or an MMA based with a UK spin. And I just want to say I feel it, and I hear the support as well. And I'm so grateful. I am simply a member of the UK MMA community who's been given a voice with the UFC, and it means such a great deal to me. And I love it when we go into fight week and I see familiar faces and people come up to me and they say things like, you know, it's good, you're like one of us in there. And that, honestly, that is, you couldn't give me a better compliment. So thank you to everyone for supporting. And happy to be here. Happy to keep spreading the good words. And let's keep European MMA, UK MMA on the rise.
Excellent. If you haven't seen it yet, go and check out Inside the Octagon. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, it's MMA UK. Please like, subscribe, and leave John a comment. Tell him that you want to join his commentary course if he puts one on.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you, Katie. Cheers.
Thanks so much, John. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.
See you later.